I'll never forget that morning. The smell of mud, the hum of generators, and the sight of that shiny luxury car, half submerged in the creek like a crushed soda can. The same car that belonged to our mighty HOA president. The woman who tore down my sandbag wall the night before the storm. I didn't feel joy when I saw it. Just that eerie stillness that comes when karma finally finishes her job. I guess nature doesn't need to file a complaint to balance the scales. When I retired after 25 years of civil engineering work for the Army Corps, I thought I was done battling nature. I'd spent decades taming rivers with concrete and blueprints, and all I wanted was peace. A porch, some coffee, maybe a few quiet years without emergency sirens. So I bought a small house in a neighborhood called Cypress Grove Estates. The kind of place that sells itself with words like exclusive, peaceful, and secure. The lawns looked cloned, the mailboxes matched, and every neighbor smiled like they were auditioning for a brochure. But behind the charm ran a thin silver creek that, to most, looked decorative. To me, it looked like a ticking clock. The first time I walked the property, I noticed the slope. Every backyard dipped gently toward that creek, and the storm drains were tiny, half clogged with decorative mulch. You didn't need a survey to know one good storm and the whole place would flood. I brought it up at my first HOA meeting. The clubhouse smelled like lemon polish and false confidence. I stood there with my old elevation charts, explaining runoff patterns and FEMA maps. That's when I met Marcia Kemp, the HOA president, a woman in her late 50s who dressed like she was attending a board meeting at the White House. Pearls, pressed blazer, and a smile sharp enough to slice bread. "Mr. Walker," she said, tilting her head like she was humoring a child. "Cypress Grove was designed by professionals. Let's not frighten the residents with unnecessary alarmism. We maintain beauty here, not panic." The room chuckled, and I knew I'd lost the floor. It felt like trying to convince a choir that rain exists. So I stopped talking and started preparing. I bought sandbags in bulk, stacked them neatly in the garage, waiting for the day that Creek decided to wake up. By late summer, the ground felt heavy under my boots, saturated. The weathermen began whispering about a tropical depression moving north. I knew before the radar did that it would hit us. The air had that pressure, the kind that makes your bones ache. So I spent a full day stacking the bags behind my house, 2 rows deep, curving along the fence line. It wasn't pretty, but it was solid. That's when Marcia pulled up in her spotless SUV, window sliding down like a queen addressing a peasant. "Mr. Walker, what exactly are you doing?" she asked, her voice dripping sugar and venom. "Protecting my property," I said without looking up. She stepped out, heels clicking against gravel. "Those bags are unsightly. They violate landscaping standards. We have rules about visual consistency." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Well, the rain doesn't care about visual consistency." Her lips tightened. "You'll need to remove them or face citation." "Then write your citation," I told her. "But when that creek climbs into your living room, you'll wish you had a few of these unsightly things yourself." She stared at me for a long second, one of those looks where pride meets confusion, and then walked off muttering something about panic mongers. I watched her drive away, her taillights glowing red against the gray sky, and I knew she wouldn't listen. People like her never do. That night, the storm alerts lit up every TV screen in town. The air turned electric. The wind came in restless bursts that rattled fences. Around midnight, as I was checking my generator, I heard something outside, a dragging sound, slow and deliberate. My porch light was off. but my security camera picked up movement. Two silhouettes in the yard. I pressed my face to the window, heart thudding, and there she was, Marcia herself, pearls glinting even in the dark, directing a teenager I recognized as her nephew. They were pulling my sandbags apart, one by one, dragging them toward her SUV. I hit record on my camera feed and just stood there, teeth clenched, watching her destroy my work. "Let's teach him a lesson," she said to the boy, laughing quietly. I'll never forget that laugh. It sounded like arrogance personified. By the time they were done, half my barrier was gone, tossed down the slope toward the creek. I wanted to run out there. But what was the point? You can't reason with someone who worships control. So I waited, and I let the camera gather what I needed. Proof. Still, as they drove off, I felt something boil inside me. Anger. Yes, but underneath that, fear. For the first time, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop the water when it came. And oh, it came. At 2 a.m., thunder cracked so loud it shook the windows. Rain hammered the roof like gunfire. Within minutes, water pooled at the edge of my yard. I ran outside, yanking on a poncho, trying to restack what I could. My boots sank into the mud, and every bag I placed slid away under the current. The creek had turned into a raging brown river, and the missing sandbags became open gates for the water to pour through. My back screamed. My arms burned, but I kept lifting. For every bag I put down, the water seemed to take two. There was a moment, standing knee deep in mud, when I almost gave up. I looked at my house, lights flickering inside, and thought, maybe she's right. Maybe I'm the fool here, building walls in a neighborhood that only cares about lawns and mailboxes. Maybe I should have moved somewhere that still respected common sense. My body wanted to stop. My mind wanted to stop. But then I saw the reflection of that creek in the lightning, how fast it was moving, how unstoppable, and something in me snapped back to life. I'd spent decades fighting worse than this. I wasn't about to lose to a woman with a clipboard. By dawn, the storm eased. I stepped out to survey the damage. My yard was a lake. But my house still stood. The sandbags that survived had done their job. I looked 2 lots down and saw Marcia's home. Water had chewed through her perfectly manicured lawn, leaving trenches, and parked by her garage, or what was left of it, was that same silver luxury car, now half gone, nose buried in the mud, tail end pointing toward the sky. It had been swept clear off her driveway into the creek, twisted like a broken toy. The neighborhood gathered in silence. No one said it, but everyone thought the same thing. Karma has perfect timing. When the police came to check on residents, I met them at the door, calm as I could manage. "You might want to see this," I told the officer, handing him the flash drive with the footage. He frowned, vowed, slid it into an evidence bag, and said, "We'll be in touch." I could tell by his eyes he'd already decided who was responsible for what. By noon, the whispers started. "Did you hear what Marcia did? She tore down his sandbags. That's why the water hit so hard." It spread faster than the flood. That evening, the HOA called an emergency community meeting. Translation: panic control. I didn't plan on going, but then I thought, no, I've earned the right to be there. The clubhouse was packed. Usually, they'd be lucky to fill 1 row of folding chairs. This time, there were people standing along the walls, still in muddy boots. Marcia walked in last, trying to look composed, though her hair was damp and her blazer hung crooked. She smiled that fake smile and began. "Thank you all for coming. This was a difficult night. But we must remain unified. I stood. Unified? I said. Tell me, Marcia, were we unified when you ripped down my sandbags? Gasps, murmurs. Her eyes widened. Excuse me? I reached into my pocket and held up a USB stick. I have footage, time-stamped. You and your nephew destroying my flood barrier hours before the storm hit. You laughed about it, said you were teaching me a lesson. Her voice cracked. That's not true. You're twisting. Then let's show everyone, I said, turning to the treasurer. Plug it in. The video played on the projector, grainy night vision, but clear enough. There she was, pearls shining, dragging bags, giving orders. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the speakers, when it ended. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, a woman near the front, young mom, still holding her baby, said, "You could have killed someone." Then the floodgates opened. No pun intended. "You endangered our homes. We trusted you, all for appearances." Voices piled on, anger building like another storm. Marcia stood frozen, pale, eyes darting. She tried to shout them down, but the crowd drowned her out. The treasurer finally raised a trembling hand. "Effective immediately," he said. "Marcia Kemp is suspended as HOA president pending removal." The applause that followed wasn't joyful. It was cathartic, raw, almost violent. Marcia slammed her folder shut. "You can't do this. I built this community." I met her eyes and said quietly, "You built a facade. The community built itself." She left, slamming the door so hard the blinds rattled. For the first time since I moved to Cypress Grove, the air felt lighter. Over the next days, the cleanup began. Neighbors who'd barely spoken to each other started helping with shovels and hoses. Without Marcia's shadow looming over us, people actually talked. They asked about drainage plans, about safety. Some even apologized for not listening before. Meanwhile, her car sat in the creek for 2 full days, a twisted monument to pride. Eventually, a tow truck hauled it out, leaving a deep scar in the mud where it had lodged. A few mornings later, an envelope showed up in my mailbox, no return address. Inside was a single note, shaky handwriting. "Please don't release the footage to the city. I'll resign quietly. Just let me leave with dignity." I read it twice, folded it, and put it in a drawer. I didn't need revenge. The flood had already done my talking. By the end of the week, "For sale" signs appeared in front of her house. She didn't come to the next meeting. No surprise there. The new board voted to change the bylaws. Sandbags and temporary barriers would be allowed without approval during storms. They even asked me to head a safety committee. I said yes, mostly because someone had to make sure we never repeated her mistake. Sometimes I still walk down to that creek. It runs quiet now, calm, pretending to be harmless again. But I know better. I stand there with my coffee, watching the current twist around the rocks. And I think about Marcia, how control was her religion, and pride her undoing. Maybe she thought she could manage everything, even nature. But nature doesn't negotiate, and water doesn't read HOA bylaws. If there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's this. When people value appearances over truth, the storm isn't what destroys them, their arrogance does.